All right. Good evening, platform viewers. Welcome back for another interesting and fun discussion on the platform. We are continuing in our theme all this month of May. We're talking about motherhood. Last week, we started the Motherhood Through the Stages series, and tonight we are continuing with that, and we're talking about mothering and parenting through the teenage years, and particularly as you work with your children and parent them through puberty and adolescence. So tonight I have with me a special guest, and all of my guests are special, of course. And I have with me Miss Gail, and Gail can wave. She can wave to
Hello.
everyone, say hello. Yes, yes.
Hello,
And
hello.
that's right. And so we welcome Gail, and Gail's going to help us talk through this, what it looks like as a mother, as a parent, walking through these stages with your teenage son or daughters. And so, as usual, we want our viewers to be able to join the discussion. So please chat in your comments, chat in your questions. We welcome them. We want to invite you into this conversation as we talk about motherhood through the stages and looking at puberty and adolescence. So, whoa, we got some difficult time period to kind of talk through. And I think to best frame our conversation, we want to make sure that we all working from the same definitions. So, of course, puberty is the time period where your body is developing, it's maturing, it's growing to your child body into a body, adult body that's able and capable to reproduce, to uh, become able to reproduce and be sexually mature. And when I say sexually mature, we're thinking just on a physical level, biological level, you're able to reproduce. And this happens, it's a natural part of growing up, and for males and females. And adolescence, of course, is a stage in childhood. It's that stage. It's kind of loosely defined. It's that stage in stages in childhood between childhood and adulthood, and in between, there's a lot of different stages. And so, early, the American Academy of Pediatrics defines the early stage of adolescence as ages 11 through 14, the middle stages between ages 15 and 17, and the late stage between 18 and 21. So interesting. So never thought a 21-year-old be considered at the tail end of adolescence, but I can see that too. So without further delay, we know what our terms are. I'm going to open the floor to Miss Gail and just ask her. So, Miss Gail, how would you describe your parenting journey through puberty and adolescence with your child or children?
Okay, so, and I let me begin by saying that I will be 100% real.
Thank
Um,
you.
this is
Thank
this
you. We
is not
appreciate that.
there, there's
We
nothing
appreciate
glamorous
that.
about it.
Uh huh.
You know, um, you think back to even when you were an adolescent
Hmm.
and being in my mom's stage now, I'm like, oh, I I don't know how she did that. You know, um, it takes so much patience,
Hmm.
um, posture, poise. And then you got to remember your purpose somewhere in it because my kids will draw me out. You see, I got my shirt on that says faith, right? It says faith over
Absolutely.
fear. Now,
Absolutely.
I will tell you, there are some days where I question that. And I'm
Mm.
like, Lord, you know what? You're going to have to come real hard because I'm trying to have faith here, but I'm about to grab one of these kids. You know, it is a very trying time. And so um, we understand the changes. We understand that, they're going through things. Um, and in fact, I want to say, I think for them, middle school is even rougher than high school.
Hmm.
Um, and it's high school is the next stage, more responsibility. Then we get into wanting to have relationships that we now have to watch a bit closer because, as you said, now they're entering into this whole sexual maturity, and we know that a lot of times they want to practice. kids. They want to test the waters and
Mm-hmm.
act on that feeling.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thanks for sharing that. What the just in a nutshell, kind of what your journey was looking like. And I think we want to, because adolescence and puberty are broad terms, and they speak to a stage in life, and where it begins and ends varies in children. But on
Right.
average, most children enter puberty about 10 years old, but they can
Mhm.
begin as early as 8 or 9. And then, of course, adolescence even more broadly defined. And it's just between that transition phase between childhood and adolescence. And so
Mhm.
that's a big gap. And so, how would you describe the challenges and the joys of parenting or mothering your child through puberty? And puberty again begins when your that body physically starts to change. With females, it's the development of breasts starts to happen, and for boys, it's testicular enlargement. That's when the puberty actually begins. Consider the onset. What was that like as a mom trying to walk your kids through this as their body is changing?
So, um, and it's interesting because you look at your kids and you look at them, and they're babies,
Hmm.
and then one day you get up and it's like, oh, you got some butt and some hips and breasts coming out, and it's like,
Hips and
okay,
tips. You're like, what is going
yes,
on?
absolutely, yes, and it's like, okay, so now we need to do the training bras.
Hmm.
I have a soon to be 11-year-old and a 16-year-old, which will be 17 during the summer. And um, so we went through the bras and the cycles and all that with the 17-year-old. And now the 11-year-old is slowly entering that phase. Um, Body image has been a lot.
Hmm.
The changes, the acne, the now they're more aware of themselves,
Hmm.
and then it starts with the comparing with other teenagers.
Ooh, yeah.
So we've had to address a lot of those issues, but on the flip side, the glamorous part of this is it's almost like you have a mini sidekick. You
Hmm.
know, I can go and say, hey, okay, let's go buy some makeup. And they can come and say, oh, fix your eyebrow right here or whatever. And they know what to do because, they're
Uh-huh.
watching all the videos and YouTube, this and that. Um, Hairstyles, they can come and braid my hair or do whatever. So it does have its beauty. But then, as I said, sometimes you really have to check them. And one of the main things that I want us to take away from this is to be present. And when I say to be present, it doesn't mean that, okay, you're home and your child is home as well. It
Hmm.
means to actually be engaged with them,
Hmm.
because what happens in this stage is that they're going through things that you have no idea.
Hmm. Mm.
And so we need to have a relationship, have and it might not be so much as a fully an open dialogue, because they're still kids and they still are going to hide a lot of stuff, but they should feel comfortable talking about whatever it is that they're going through.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think you threw out so many golden nuggets there, and I wanted to just unpack a little bit because I know you have adolescent girls,
Hmm.
and I know and viewers, of course, if you're going through this and you've parented adolescent boys and you want to chime in this conversation, please, we want to hear from you ASAP to
Yeah,
join this
please do, because
conversation.
mine
Yes.
is 3, so I'm not there yet, but
Yeah, that's
forewarn
right.
me.
That's right. So her little boy is still a little boy. He hasn't quite gone to that point. So if you are a viewer and you're tuning in, we are talking about motherhood through the stages, and we're focusing on puberty and adolescence. And this evening we have Miss Gail with us, and she is unpacking what it's like from her experience of mothering and parenting children through these kind of tough phases between puberty and adolescence. And so I wanted to ask you, I know you brought up body image, and that's huge among not only adults, but especially teens, because they're self conscious, because they're
Hmm.
more, like you said, they're becoming more self aware. So they're aware of themselves, and it's the way that they think. They think very concretely. And more abstract thinking comes as they get a little bit older, but they think,
Hmm.
right or wrong, black or white. And so they're very self absorbed and they only see things in a limited way. So acne and things that seem so simple that some of our adults have long forgotten what that was like, to
Right.
feel like, oh, you wake up in the morning and I have this pimple on my face and you're totally obsessed with it all
Hmm.
day, and you're thinking about who's gonna look at you.
Hmm.
This boy that you like is really
Yes.
cute. Is he gonna see me in the hallway and think ill, and so you're just so consumed as adults. It's like, you don't even think about that. You think about bills and work, and you like, forget that,
Right.
you know. But as a adolescence, this is like major deal. How
Yeah.
did you walk through it with your daughter, the body
Um,
image?
so, well, I'll talk about the acne side of that. So she still has a great deal of acne, and so we've tried the proactive and things like that. But with her, it is just more of hormones, and she's just gonna have to grow past this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we'll do facials. They're into the face masks and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I said, you know what? If that's what makes you happy and that's what makes you feel confident,
Mm-hmm.
what's the face mask? We can go ahead and get one. Another thing that, yeah, she put on her face mask in the night, and they have the turmeric one and all that,
Yeah,
and
I
they
love
love
it.
it. Yes, and
Mm-hmm.
even something as simple as getting her, and this is the 17-year-old, getting her eyebrows arched for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that it empowered her a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we'll go and get pedicures, manicures, whatever. Another thing, so, and even with us as adults, you go and get your hair done and you feel so much better.
Oh, yes, yes.
And so that's one of the things that, you know, as women, when we have younger girls that we are training and trying to bring up, these are the things that we need to instill in them. It's that self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Love what you have, work with what you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we can add on to it. You see, I got a little lipstick on and got my nails. You know what I'm saying? Add on to it. Don't overdo it, but just love what you have. And that's honestly how we have gotten through a lot of the self-image struggles. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I will be honest because, as I said, I want to be as transparent and real as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there has been times where I'm like, oh, let's go walk because you're sitting, and it's not about size, it's about health.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And as a nurse, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right now most of these kids are actually obese. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was one thing that I'm like, okay, no, we have got to get health in check. So, instead of having Burger King twice a week because you feel like you want a burger, no, we're going to eat home cooked food, and we're going to
That's
walk
right.
around the neighborhood, go ride your bike, get off the phone, get off the video games, go
Oh
outside
yeah.
and play.
Absolutely. And that the screen time and limiting that, and it's very difficult. It's very
Hmm.
difficult to do it because even it's a challenge in my hold. I'm like, hold up, how long have you actually been on the computer?
Right.
And then
Hmm.
and it's fun. I say it's time to get off. They jump off the computer and run straight to the TV. So I'm like, oh my gosh, no, no. So it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and body image. And again, I don't know if any parents out there who are parenting young boys, but I can speak from experience. And then of course you, Gail, with your young girls, and myself having girls. Body image and weight and things like
Hmm.
that. It plays a big part in it. And
It
how they
does.
feel, and you're already
Hmm.
self conscious,
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh my gosh, and adding on the hair struggles, and I can say for myself, growing up in an area that was predominantly white at that time, it was about 70% white where I grew up at that time, and not having, so in general, black culture wasn't the pervasive culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of things that in your own microcosm, you didn't have to explain, braids, weaves, tracks,
Right.
that kind of thing. That was just normal part of, black girl life.
Yes.
But when you're out there and you're mixing with different races and cultures,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not necessarily understand that, that was very challenging to kind of walk through that and the questions and like, well, how did your hair grow like that? And what do
Well,
they
so can I
do?
tell you
And
that
can
I
I
still
touch that?
experience that in today's world?
Oh,
I'll go
wow.
and put extensions in, get my braids done or whatever, and I go to work, and my Caucasian coworkers are like, "Oh, so how did they put that in? And what do you do? And so you braid it, and where'd you get the hair from?" And it baffles me because I'm like, "So you guys wear extensions also?"
Oh, mm-hmm.
It's no
Absolutely.
different. It's just a different process. It's not like bonded to the hair or whatever. But um,
Yeah.
I
All
find
those
that
who didn't
even
know,
now,
newsflash, we
yes,
are not exclusively black.
yes, yes.
All races have
Oh,
participated in weaves and extensions and wigs.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. And I remember when, so I grew up in Brooklyn. I left New York and came to Western Maryland for school. And at that point, we were into relaxers.
Uh-huh.
Or in my culture, we call them perms. So you get your hair perm. And it wasn't until I want to say maybe I was about 25. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
25. And it was just like something clicked. Now, it might have been that at that point they had more ethnic products,
Mm-hmm.
that was a whole new line coming out. But I found myself and I'm like, wow, I have all this gorgeous hair. So why am I putting all these chemicals and all that in my
Mm-hmm.
hair? But just that influence, because we grew up, oh, light skin and straight hair was the in thing.
Uh-huh.
That's what made you beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So we went and got all this stuff. And even now, sometimes I really honestly have to check myself because I'll go and get a weave installed. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I have two young girls that I gotta make sure I'm not sending the wrong image to them.
Oh, wow. Yeah. All
And we
right.
don't pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're right. And
Yeah,
I and
I
I
had to learn that the hard way.
and I like that you raised that, just as parents, as mothers, leading by example. And it's more so what you do rather than what you say. And
Absolutely.
what they're taking in so much, like sponges, even when you're
Hmm.
not speaking to them directly and teaching them and guiding them, they're absorbing all of things that they hear, that they see from you, from TV, from those around them. And so they're taking in all of this, even when you're not paying attention to them, they're taking it in. And
Yes.
they're creating a reality, they're making judgments and assessments about the world around them and trying to figure it out,
Hmm.
trying to come into their own truth. And I really think that's so powerful, Gail, that you mentioned that. Like, oh, what am I doing? What message am I sending to my children? And I can even speak for myself. I've gotten so accustomed to kind of self-loathing, like, I gotta lose weight, look,
Hmm.
and making all these comments about my body and being negative and joking. And I had to start being mindful of that and start dialing it back and saying, you know what, I'm not gonna keep making those kind of comments. I'm gonna, promote positivity,
Right.
healthy
Hmm.
living, just like you mentioned, healthy living. And I'm trying to instill in the girls, and it's so tough because they already have these images formed, and the fat
Yes.
shaming is already there.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
young as like five,
Hmm.
6 year olds or
Hmm.
younger, are already saying, oh, they're fat, they're skinny, they're this and that. and it's so early, and I'm like, and I feel like I'm trying to catch up, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want you to call your sister skinny, I don't want you to call her fat, I don't want you to, because God made all of us different, and we got
Hmm.
different body sizes and different types, and even if we all ate the same diet and all did the
Right. We
same
still would not
exercise,
look the
we
same.
still wouldn't look
Hmm.
the same. We still wouldn't look the same.
Hmm.
Everybody would still look different. And
Right.
so I don't know. Hopefully, I'm praying that they get it at some point. I feel like I'm saying it and saying it and saying it, and like, but I know that's just part of parenting, right?
It
Repetition.
is. Well, but
That's
so, and as you said, I think you just got to keep approaching it from the health mindset.
mm-hmm.
Not okay. Um, look, I got my, what they call them, chicken wings or turkey wings or whatever. So don't don't approach it from that. Approach it from, oh, let me go tone my muscle up, and you know what I'm
hmm
saying. I think it'll send a clearer picture and a much better message.
That's right. And I think it's also powerful for your children to watch you embracing healthy habits. They see you going out
Absolutely.
and walking, riding a
Mhm.
bike, going to the gym, working with a personal trainer, weightlifting, and they're seeing you do these
Mhm.
things, do an aerobics class or
Mhm.
turn on YouTube and dance to a fit video,
Yes.
whatever you can do, show, lead by example, because like we said earlier in the broadcast, is what you do more so than what you say. And when you're parenting these teens, they're in a place where they're trying to figure it out on their own, and
Yes.
all of that foundation and everything that was kind of poured into them and shown to them as they went through those early primary years, in early childhood and all through, now they're trying to take it and build on it and figure out things on their own. But it's so important to be there. So that kind of leads me into the next question, in thinking about not just puberty, but just adolescence in general. What do you feel like have been the challenges of or joys of, through this adolescence period, helping your child make that transition from childhood to early adulthood?
So, and I know this might sound bizarre, you know, because we talk to them, and even, your girls are 9, 10, 11, even in that stage, you
Mm-hmm.
talk to them and they want to clap back. Um, you know, but on the other side, they are very open.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the adolescent stage, there is a window of opportunity for us to pour into them and pour into
Uh-huh.
them in a positive light. Um, and so a lot of times we'll just sit and talk about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, one of the girlfriend's brother is, he got a little girl pregnant, and that was a whole thing that we actually discussed that, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you know it's one thing when we tell them, hey, you're going through this, you can get pregnant, but it's different when they see it amongst their peers, because then it gets
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more real.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing, and it was like, oh, well, such and such got someone pregnant, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what your body is capable of doing that now. And that's why you really have to be very mindful and very careful in what you're doing and how you're doing it. Even dating. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like and I say single dating as in just boy and girl going out together. If you're going to date in a group, then that's fine. Because again, someone needs to be accountable there. Now, they're teenagers, so a lot of times you can't even trust that. But at least you're not going to do certain things if others are around. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So you do group dating. I don't encourage driving with peers. Not right
Uh-huh.
now. Not at 16, 17, 18. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there yet. Um, and again, you think back to when you were that age.
Mm-hmm.
Even now as adults, look, I go in my car, my stereo is on 20. I got the phone here. I have Bluetooth, so I'm not, I'm driving I'm
Hands
hands
free.
free, but you're still distracted by all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just you. You
Absolutely.
trying to find your lipstick and whatever while you're driving, all that stuff. So I am not ready for, a group of teenagers going
Doing
driving in
that.
a car. No. Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Um, we can do a pickup spot, drop off spot, whatever the case may be. So those are some of the things because we understand that they're in a stage where, they're approaching semi-adulthood. They think
Mm-hmm.
they're grown, but we ain't there yet. They're approaching semi-adulthood, and you want to give them that independence because
Uh-huh.
that's how they grow. That's how they
Yeah.
mature. But it still has to be some controlled independence.
How do you, and I think it's really good that you bring that up. How do you control their independence? Because I'm trying to think about the viewer on the other end of the screen, and they hear you saying, hey, control their independence. It's a push and a pull, but they may not understand exactly what that looks like in,
Mhm.
in practical terms. How do you do that? How do you reconcile that tension between providing discipline and limitations, and then also giving them a little freedom and allow them to be independent?
So I will probably do this even when they're we'll give them like maybe 22. That
That's right.
if
When
you
they're
if
22.
you're at that age. But until then, you know, um, if you're going wherever, you're going to a friend's house or whatever, I'm still contacting parents. I need to know who the parent is. I need to know where this house is. I need to know who's gonna be there. Um, with phone, um, dad usually checks text messages, and that has been social media has been a blessing and such a curse
Hmm.
because they are now opened to a world
Oh, wow.
of things, and that can be positive and negative, because
Hmm.
not all of it is bad. But again, because they're teens and they lack that judgment, or adolescents and they lack that judgment, this is where they get introduced to a whole different world.
Hmm.
So we're still checking phones. We're still monitoring. We're still
Hmm.
I am very active in the school system. So I'm, for one of the schools, I'm the PTA president.
Oh,
For the
wow.
other, I'm a PTA member. So yes, I still know what's going on. I still need to know when you're taking PSATs and SATs and you have your state exams or whatever the case may be. hmm
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
then your independent part in that is that you need to study and show yourself approved and
Hmm.
be, because that's a whole part of responsibility. So that means that your teacher doesn't need to contact me to say, hey, this assignment is missing or whatever, because you're supposed to be responsible and independent. So, these are the ways that, and I tell mine, this is how you show that you are ready for certain things. It's the
Hmm.
little things that you have to have control of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that teens naturally try to push the boundaries and the
hmm
limits, and there's a lot of manipulation that goes on,
hmm
because they know that, oh, mommy or daddy, they love me so much, and they just trying to get what they want, and when and how they want it, but they're not thinking. And I think that's why it's so important as parents, as mothers, as parents, that we still stay present in our children's lives.
hmm
Just when they get
Absolutely.
to adolescence, they get to the teens. I think sometimes parents kind of let go maybe a little bit too much,
hmm
and then some of them are still like really like helicopter parents, like everywhere they go, every move they make, they're right over them, hovering. And so I'm sure you got some extremes, but trying to find that balance in the middle, I
hmm
think it is a challenge, and it may look different for every child because every child is
Right.
not the same.
Yes.
But
Yes.
allowing them, because they have this strong will and they want to be independent, they want their own mind to think for themselves and do their own thing and be with their friends, but they're also
hmm
kind of scared too because they don't know exactly
Right.
what it's like to be out on your own. And so they're trying to, be tough, and but they really need it. They really need parents present and there. Especially when you're working with girls, young girls, and they're growing up, and there's so many other influences from media, from their friends, that are competing with probably the values and the truth that you're trying to instill in your own children.
Well, and
And
you brought up a
Mhm.
good point where the friends are concerned.
Absolutely.
So I try my best to know know the friends. If
Uh-huh.
you have close friends that you're spending the majority of the time on the phone with or whatever, then that's someone that we need to know as a family, because
Uh-huh.
clearly that's someone who has that level of influence on you and
Mhm.
that you're that close to. So um, I try to, the kids will come over, and because even your kids come here, and
Yeah.
everyone, I'm like, look, these kids, when they come here, they know me. They know they can push certain stuff, but they know for everything else, they're like, oh no, Miss Gail, she's not gonna play that. But they come, they do whatever, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but they're monitored. I tell them, look, this is where you need to be. This is what needs to happen, and go do whatever. If someone is crying or screaming, then holler at me. But if not, no, jump off the tree for all I care. Go and do whatever. Just make sure you don't break nothing. So
Like, don't break anything.
right. Yeah, so you gotta give them their freedom, because that's how they learn. They just have to go out and do it. And yes, they're gonna fail. We
Mhm.
fail. We probably
Mhm.
still failing now, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but again, it's a part of growing up.
Mhm.
Um, you look at even us, there's some of us adults that look, we still don't got it together.
Mhm.
We still trying. So,
Absolutely.
we really have to hold these young people's hands and let them know that, okay, yeah, you're gonna mess up, and that's all right. We'll
Mhm.
figure it out. Don't mess up too much, because then we're gonna have a lot of work to do. But
Oh gosh,
we'll figure it
yes.
out.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm glad that you mentioned that you are a part of the PTA, and you having a one in one point you are serving leadership as a president of PTA, and in one school you're actually a member of the PTA. How important is it for mom or dad, or just a parent for that matter, to have a hand in what the children are doing on the academic level at the school? Having their hand on their finger on the pulse of what's happening in their school life.
Right. So I think every parent's goal for their child or their adolescent is, even if you don't want them to go to college, you want them to get a trade, and you more so want them to get out of your house and be dependent, that they can sustain themselves.
Uh huh.
So in doing so, it's only natural that at this stage you're checking to make sure that they're doing what they have to do to set that foundation. So, you know, the community, especially in a lot of our community,
Mhm.
we don't get how important that is. It's okay, well, mom and dad sent you to school, you go home, do your homework, oh, you bring a slip, oh, teacher said whatever, and that's it. But there is so much more to it than that. Um, for instance, even a lot of the functions, that comes from the PTA. We are taking suggestions, we are collaborating with the community, because you are who actually influences how your child is taught.
Mm. Mm.
And that's
Wow.
what we don't realize, because remember, teaching truly should begin at home.
Mhm.
So, if you're going and you don't know that your child has an exam in the morning, well, how are you truly leading and caring for that child if you don't even know what the child is having? So you don't know if, they need breakfast in the morning, if they need to be up on time, if they need to arrive at a certain time.
Mhm.
Um, and then even where the principals are concerned, I think was it last month? I don't know if you saw it. They had a thing on Fox 5, a little 5-year-old, and they had actually arrested him. Um, but he was carrying on, fighting the teachers and the principal and all that. And I looked at that and I said, you know what? This is probably the first time that mom went to that school. I said,
Mm.
I'm sure there was no kind of parental engagement. Because when things happen, oh, best believe Mama Bear is quick to go up there and show her behind. But we also need to have that much that attitude and that power and that protection piece when we need to go and advocate for our children and to make sure our children are getting what they need. Because your taxes, this is what pays for public school.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, go and be a part of the PTA. You don't have to be in a position there, but go and find out what's happening at your school. Go and find out what your kids will be going through in the next semester, next phase. Go and find out how you can even help to make that transition better for not only your child, but for all the other children there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think I can't underscore enough. And I know it's a challenge because, personally, I'm trying to strive to be even more involved in their
Hmm.
school. But you can't underscore enough. Parents, you have to know what is happening in your child's school. Gone are the days where you just send them off and just that's it.
Right.
Just let me see the report card. Let me see the final. You really have to.
Right.
You really have to look at what they're doing,
Hmm.
what lessons they're being taught, what material they're being taught from, and as you're growing, and now we're talking about in high school and middle school, what history are they being taught? What are they not being taught or shown?
Right.
And so these things are very important, and parents have a powerful voice. And so if you notice things like, oh, I don't want my child, the only Black history they're getting is slavery and civil rights. There are more to Black history than that. And
Hmm.
I really want to see
Hmm.
more than that. And you
Yes.
can raise your voice in a constructive way, not
Hmm.
being divisive or disrespectful or, a rebel rouser, but just saying,
Right.
hey, I have some concerns here. I think there's a lot of history that's not being taught here,
Hmm.
and that's a space where you can do that and advocate for your child and their growth and
Absolutely.
support them through that. So my hats off to you, Gail, and I celebrate you for being a part of the PTA and then
Thank
being a PTA president. And so because that's so important. So in that same vein, how as a mother, how are you helping your child or provide guidance as they're thinking about their future as they get into this late adolescent phase, um or I guess the middle phase where they're like 15 to 17 years old,
you.
they're looking towards senior graduation, they're looking towards or thinking about beyond high school. How are you navigating that or giving them guidance in that phase?
So I tried to start earlier. And just like everything, you remember your mom telling you, oh, you better make sure you get a scholarship because I don't know how you're gonna pay for school, So I went through that. I tried to push that. Like, hey, make sure you got them grades because you're not playing sports, so you can't get an athletic scholarship. So let's try to get the grades up. Um, but so cost. Um, I am a realist. I don't believe that you should be in debt to get an education, especially not at your undergraduate level, you
Uh-huh.
know. Um, and for some of us, that might mean going to a community college for 2 years. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. Go and get your basic stuff because you know what? When you go away to an institution, that same course is going to cost you at least twice the amount.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be an adult entering life, you're 24, 25. You can't qualify for your first apartment. You can't qualify to get a first car. If you want to even do a lot of government jobs, they check your credit. So if
Mm-hmm.
you already messed this up because you have student loans and you have all these credit cards and all of that, then you got a problem entering life. So I
Mhm.
try to break down costs, and it's not only your classes, but you're going to have to think about dormitory fees. You're going to have to think about even livelihood, because you're going to
Mhm.
want to go out. You're going to need your toiletries and your basic supplies, and that has to come from somewhere. So is it really worth you going to Stanford for $60,000, or can you go right here to Bowie for 30,000?
Uh-huh.
Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're getting the same degree. Now, granted, the name is different, but it's still the same degree and it's still
Mhm.
the same education. And again, we spoke about this whole technology thing,
Mhm.
social media. Honey, everything is here that you want to learn. So
Mhm.
even if you want to say, hey, you know what? I have this degree from here, but I want to do something else. Even during the pandemic, Harvard taught, I think, 27 free online courses. Harvard
Wow.
University.
Wow.
So
Wow.
these are the things that we have to research and open our kids up to seeing that there is so much out there. And this is what I try to do with my adolescent. Like, hey, okay, you're gonna get out of here. You're going to school, but we're gonna do this smart.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's I think it's just so wonderful that you bring up the financial piece, because it just speaking anecdotally and just from my own opinion, having gone through adolescence and high school and beyond, the financial education was next to zero
Yes.
through the through the education system. And
Mm-hmm.
really it which means that either pushes the education financial literacy on the parents to teach the children, or
Mm-hmm.
some other avenue, the church, a
Right.
community group, a social group. But the
Mm-hmm.
school really literally did next to nothing. I do believe, I remember we had home economics, which I think they should bring that back. But they had
I'm
home
right there with
economics.
you.
They had home economics in seventh grade, and part of it we had a life skills rotation, and they taught
Mm-hmm.
us how to write a check.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember they were talking about balancing your checkbook
Mm-hmm.
and those kind of things that seem kind of archaic now. But those things, that was the closest to financial education that we had, was how to write a check, how to do these things, how to balance your checkbook. And that was about it. After that, it
Right.
was like
And then
nothing. It
you
was
turn
nothing.
18. You turn 18, and then they say, hey, you're legal. You can go apply for this and you can go apply for that. And remember, as you said, you don't have that knowledge. So
Mm-hmm.
now you find that a lot of times, they enter in this cycle. Debt is such a brutal and difficult cycle to get out of.
Oh, yes. Oh,
If
yes.
you enter it, it is so hard to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
And these are a lot of the things that I go through with them, even something as simple as their allowance.
Mm-hmm.
I say, look, at this point, I'm supporting you. So what do you need to spend money on?
Mm-hmm.
What,
Yeah.
what do you need that much?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I buy clothes, I buy shoes, I buy whatever, even the little stupid stuff that they want that I don't understand, So it's like, okay, save your money. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
girl. They had this it's a little pop thing. I don't know what it does. But it's supposed to be one of these fidget
Yeah.
whatever.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a whole stand for it in Columbia Mall. And I took them and they're like, oh, can we get one of these? And I'm like, what is this? I'm looking at this rubber thing. And I said, well, this looks like an ice cube tray. Like, what is this? And they're like, oh, look, you press it like this. And $12.
Oh my
$12.
gosh.
Yes.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh.
this is such a waste. But you know what? Is their thing, they understand it. But as I said, even where allowance is concerned, save your money.
Mm-hmm.
Save your money.
Oh my
If it's
gosh.
even a penny,
Mm-hmm.
save your money.
Absolutely. Gail, have you came across any resources out there to help parents um, give their child that financial literacy, or even more broadly, and not even that specific,
Mhm.
guidance out there for parents to help them in navigating adolescence and helping your child to make that transition from childhood to adulthood safely and with wisdom. Are there
Right.
any resources that you've tried that may
Well,
work?
so one thing for the when it comes to financing, PG County Public Schools actually has a lot of resources on their website. And then also, if you belong to a credit union, you can
Hmm.
open a kids account
Hmm.
and you can go through. I wish I could share my screen, but because it'll be my actual account, y'all gonna know my business, and I don't want all that. But it has everything on there as far as, it shows you, okay, well, you spent $500 for this month, and it breaks it down to what you actually purchased, what percentage of that $500 you used for food or clothing or whatever the case may be. And then it has a whole saving system for you, so parents can really utilize it. And honestly, I think most banks, as long as they have
Hmm.
um, capability of setting up a child account, most can go through that with you. But I know especially the credit unions do have that. And I'm trying to find, because I saved an email, I sent it to myself specifically for this because I knew that I would not remember. Um, but I want to say, is it Healthy Kids? It might be Healthy Kids. So ah, it is kidshealth.org.
Hmm.
And that has resources for parents from um, babies to adolescent. It has numerous resources. It has even from nutrition to, dealing with bullying to peer pressure, just all sorts of stuff. One of the things that I think we as parents should really implement is, and we'd spoken about that engagement with our kids. As you're going through this site, have your child sit with you.
Uh-huh.
Let's look at whatever the topic is and let's discuss this. What do you think about this? Um, those are just the little things that you can get to facilitate a relationship or an ongoing relationship with them. If you have one already, or if you don't, take interest in what they like. Sometimes that can not only teach you something new, but it'll actually put you in a different light where they're concerned. Because then it'll be like you're not just on them as a parent, but you actually care about them and care about their feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really think, and several times you've brought this up, there's no replacement for just presence. And you know what? I actually think I've read online an article where Will Smith was interviewed, and he's always been very open and transparent about his struggles as a father, as a parent, and as a celebrity husband and parent.
Mhm.
But he, just said, hey, there's no substitute for just presence,
Yes.
and you don't have to be a perfect parent, or
Mhm.
know it all, because no one does. No one knows it all,
Right.
and we're
Mhm.
all doing the best that we can. And just be present and available. And I really think that's a consistent theme that's been coming out from what you've been sharing: being available, knowing who their friends are,
Mhm.
screening them, talking to them like, hey, what do you think about that? And using just ordinary trips to the mall as a financial lesson. Do you
Mhm.
really need to buy that? Is that really worth it? Can you use this money elsewhere, in another place? And just really
Yes.
walking through that. And I really think is, even having this conversation is just reminding me of the need for more support, for building that financial literacy, building confidence, and thinking about
Mhm.
careers and planning. So, your role being in PTA president, being PTA, and also being a mother and a parent yourself, how important was like the guidance counselor at your child's school, particularly in high school, with helping with that career planning and mapping that out through these adolescent years?
So I will say that I think the guidance counselor, now granted, if you do need that extra support for your student, they are available. However, most of it is trying to take them from the high school level to the college level.
Uh huh.
And naturally, because at this stage, it's okay, PSATs, getting your applications in. And that's what they're focused on. Now, again, if you do have an issue that arises, they are there for help. And Lord knows, oh, Pastor must be tired of me because I, girl, I call him for everything. Um, I am young but old, so
Mm-hmm.
I honestly still believe in that it takes a village to raise a child. You know,
Mm-hmm.
with the middle one, a lot of times what I even do with her is I'll call one of her cousins because they're closer to age. Because I'm old, what do I know? In their head, it's like, meh, lady, whatever. So I'll call one of the cousins that's a little bit closer to their age and go ahead, talk to them, because it does take that village. And sometimes as parents, we don't see and we don't understand because
Uh huh.
when we went through that stage, it was a different time.
Absolutely.
And a lot of
Absolutely.
times we forget anyway. We're we're in a different phase now. So we don't
Absolutely.
remember certain things, you
Absolutely.
know. So yeah, sometimes you do need to tap into grandma or um tap into uncle, tap into cousin, tap into pastor. And he is, Lord bless him, because he is always available.
That's right. That's right. And and just transition a little bit. I know we kind of glossed over the topic. And again, I want to make sure that I include in our viewers, platform viewers, if you have any comments or questions, please chat to me. We want to hear from you. We want you to join this discussion, especially if you are a parent out there walking through adolescence with boys, bringing up boys, because we have a lot of knowledge and experience just drawing on from our own personal experience
Mhm.
bringing up girls, but boys are a little bit different. So we would love to hear from you. So platform viewers, please chat in your questions or comments. We want to hear from you. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about motherhood through the stages and looking at puberty and adolescence. And we have Miss Gail here who is chatting with us, and we're having a discussion about what that looks like and all of the challenges to puberty and adolescence. And so, just a transition, we talked about a little bit about navigating your child through the puberty as their body is maturing and growing, and they're to a body that's able to reproduce, that's sexually mature. And we're just speaking purely from a biological standpoint. By no
Mhm.
means are we implying that a 12-year-old is sexually mature and should be having sex, okay? We don't
Correct.
want anyone to take that out of context. That's not what we're saying. And we're speaking of a biologically taking a child body that's infertile, unable to reproduce, to now a body that's able to reproduce.
Mhm.
And so we know there's a lot that goes along with that. But for those tuning in, how did you walk through sex, having the talk or several talks for that matter about sex and sexuality with your pubescent or adolescent child?
So I am very direct. So how I approach is like, okay, well, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you think is even going on with your body. You know, how are you feeling? So that's usually how I start the conversation with them. And then we go into, okay, well, this is what's happening. So, we discuss the cycles. One of the things that I had to teach my oldest was, hey, as a young lady who is now on her cycle, um, or who was even growing hair at that time. So, they're at the stage you get pubic hair and all that. And
Mhm.
with that comes the body odor because they're sweating more. And this is all a natural process.
Mhm.
Um, but with that being said, that now means that you have to take more care in how you clean yourself and
Mhm.
your
Hygiene.
deodorant.
Mhm.
Yes,
Dress and
absolutely.
hygiene. Mhm.
Yes. And so we went through even having personal wipes, and you always keep a little pouch in your purse or your book bag or whatever it might be with a backup sanitary napkin.
Mhm.
Um, make sure you have your little Tylenol or Motrin or whatever it is that you might need, because at that age, their cycle is not scheduled. So
Mhm.
they can go through times where they might have a cycle in January, but they might not have one in February.
Uh-huh.
Or it might be heavier or lighter just
Mhm.
because the body is going through so many changes.
Mhm.
With that, then it's also like, hey, so now, you can't, if this is a day that you're on your cycle, well, you need to bring extra sanitary pads with you because you
Uh-huh.
can't wear one all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know yes, and how do you dispose of it? How do you wrap it up, because you don't just take it and throw it in the garbage?
Uh-huh.
you know so yeah, and honestly, these things are still a challenge because
Uh-huh.
there are times I go in the bathroom and I'm like, why do I need to see your blood? I don't need to
Mhm.
see that.
Uh-huh.
Wrap it up and get it together. But
Yeah.
these are the things that we really have to go through with them. And even soap wise, so they like the Bath and Body Works stuff, all the fruity stuff, and that's great. But a lot of times for that adolescent body odor, and this is just because of the hormones, it does not cut it.
Mhm.
So, we went through, hey, use some soap first, actual bar soap, and
Uh-huh.
then you can put your sweet stuff on after. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, wearing deodorant.
Mhm.
Um, and interestingly enough, and this is just the nurse side of me, I also had to educate them about products like Summer's Eve and all that. And I'm like, they advertise these things on TV, and you would feel like, oh, this is a great product to use and all that. But I had to actually educate them that your vagina was created to clean itself. It
Uh-huh.
has its own pH, you know? So if you're putting all this stuff, you're
Mhm.
throwing it off,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
So it
Absolutely.
it has been just a myriad of just different things, just trying to
Mhm.
get them through to really understand I'm developing,
Yeah.
you know?
And you know what? And I appreciate your candor and your transparency in discussing these things, because as your children are navigating this and their body is changing and things are happening, it also brings up a lot of insecurities, um, uncomfortableness, even
Hmm.
in the adults, in having to address this, and maybe they
Hmm.
didn't, weren't it wasn't really addressed
Hmm.
in an efficient manner when they went through it. They had to figure it out,
Right.
trial and error. Wasn't a lot of
Yes.
talking
Hmm.
going on, and so it does take a lot. And I know that being a nurse and having that background, you're a little more comfortable with biological terms
Hmm.
and being straight, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is the pH of your girl parts and this and that and going on. But there are a lot of others who get real tongue tied and they
Hmm.
turn bright red, they get nervous, they start sweating, just
So
really. and they start talking about these things, and they're like, whoa, you talking too much, that's TMI, I don't want to hear that.
Mhm.
And so I sympathize with you parents. I do. But we do have to get to the point where we can work through this with fear and
Mhm.
trembling, because if they don't find out from you, they're going to find out somewhere.
And I
And
was just about to say that.
exactly. And so you
Absolutely.
have to push through this and get yourself some resources. And I want to share with you all, our viewers. I'm going to go ahead and put it up. It's actually, it's a book. It's easy. It's called The Talk: 7 Lessons to Introduce Your Child to Biblical Sexuality. And I think it's a powerful book, and it's actually designed for 8 to 12. So
Mhm.
little right on the cusp, prepubescent up into early onset of puberty, up into early adolescence. This
Mhm.
is what this book age group is designed, and it's really the book is designed to help the parents just read it like a script, like they're in a movie. They don't have to think about what to say. It
Mhm.
has all of the diagrams. It even has some
Mhm.
biological videos on that you can link to for free from the internet, and they're not raunchy or expressive or pornographic. It's very biological, along the lines of what you would see on National Geographic. So it's educational. And
Mhm.
you really just read through it, almost like a script. They tell you what to say, to help you if you can't, if you get tongue tied, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. Using these anatomical um, terms like, vagina or penis or testicles or these things. These are just biological terms. It's anatomy. And so we have to come out of this, that's inappropriate, that's uncomfortable. We have to really come out of this to really give our children the best guidance and support and knowledge, because just like, you went through it, you got through it too. If your parents didn't tell you, guess what? You figured it out.
Mhm.
You figured it out, and we don't want our children to figure it out the hard way, and,
Right.
and get misinformation, and they go into their peers who don't know anything. They're
Mhm.
just as clueless as they are, or going to the internet, and that opens up a whole world
Right.
of stuff
Absolutely.
that you definitely don't want your children to be exposed to, because some of that stuff you really have to filter through. And so this book here, you can buy it on Amazon. It's inexpensive. The earlier you start this conversation, the better. And I will say, I mean, I'm no child development specialist or anything like that, or expert, but I will say, if you're waiting to have this talk, once your child's 15, 16, 17, it's probably too late. So you really have
Yeah.
to start
Mhm.
young, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I believe I heard a statistic that the average age that children are getting exposed to pornography, I believe it's like 8 or 9 years old. And so we can't bury our heads in the sand, and just, turn bright red and turn away and act like it's going to go away, because it's not going to go away. And I appreciate you so much, Gail, for sharing and being candid and sharing what you went through raising and still raising your
Mhm.
adolescent girls, and walking them through hygiene, walking them through how to handle a menstrual period, your body's changing, breast developing, body hair developing, all of these things, and how to navigate that. And they're uncomfortable conversations. And yes, I agree with you. They're very uncomfortable. But we have to get through it, and we have to do that to help prepare our children for adulthood and help them make a as smooth as possible transition from childhood to adulthood. And so it's hard to believe that we've already gone through our hour
Oh,
already. This is such a
wow.
big topic. I know it just seemed like it was just a few minutes. It's such a big topic, and it's very difficult to condense all of this
Right. Mhm.
into just a simple, 1 hour. But my hope is that those who are viewing and listening, this will spark you to want to know more, to have more conversations with your adolescent children. Or if you don't even have adolescent children, you're preparing to be a parent or thinking about it, you better start thinking about it now, and how you're going to prepare, because it's going to come, and they come and they grow up fast.
Mhm.
I
They
heard it all
do.
through my childhood, like, oh, you'll grow up fast. As a child, you feel like it's an eternity. But here I
Right.
am now
And now
looking
you're
like, oh my
experiencing
God.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
now I'm experiencing. I'm like, oh, what happened? When did I become older? When did I come older? So it's very important. So I pray that you all have been blessed by this conversation, that you've been challenged, that you've been inspired and informed to get information and support it. It does take a village to raise one child. Your village could be your pastor, your clergy member, your church members, your family members, godparents,
Hmm.
friends, everyone. Sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, everyone is a part of your child's village. And it really does take everyone. I want to thank Gail for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank
For
you for having me.
Yes, absolutely, for being direct, telling it like it is. That's exactly what we love here on the platform. We hold nothing back. So I want to thank her so much for volunteering her time and be willing to have this discussion with us. So again, this is your host, Natalie Shropshire. I thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week on Monday at 7:30 as usual, and we have a special Mother's Day treat planned. Mother's Day has passed, but we continue to celebrate mothers this entire month of May. So until we meet again, be blessed to be a blessing. Have a good evening.
Take care, guys.
All